It's Wednesday, October 16th, 2024. Record early voting in Georgia, vintage Trump in Chicago, and trust in media hits an all-time low. Next on the AM Update. Kamala Harris says she is considering taxpayer-funded reparations for black people. She made these comments yesterday during an audio town hall with media personality Charlemagne the God.
It's understood that you are running for president for all people of America. Asking for specifics for black communities doesn't mean don't do for others, but black Americans are heavily asked to vote Democrat in every election for over half a century with very little in return. What are your plans to address these very important issues and change that narrative?
Thank you, Zeke.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for your work. So to your point, yes, I am running to be a president for all Americans. That being said, I do have clear eyes about the disparities that exist and the context in which they exist, meaning history, to your point. So my agenda, well, first of all, on the point of reparations, it has to be studied. There's no question about that.
Yikes. Early in-person voting has kicked off in several states across the country. One of the most closely watched states is Georgia, where on Tuesday, a record number of early votes were cast in the Peach State. Residents headed to the polls in that critical battleground state that's still grappling with fallout from Hurricane Helene. Roughly 252,000 ballots had been cast as of Tuesday. That's according to the Georgia Secretary of State's office. The previous first-day record was 136,000 in 2020. The state is one of the most closely watched this election, with, of course, Joe Biden having claimed that state back in 2020 and Donald Trump trying to reclaim it. New state laws have tightened rules for absentee ballots and have cracked down on the availability of drop boxes. While many of those drop boxes were available 24/7 in 2020, this year there will be fewer of them, and there will be in election offices or early vote locations with hours that tend to mimic normal business hours. In Chicago, Donald Trump spoke to Bloomberg's Economic Club of Chicago. Here he is, just in vintage Donald Trump fashion, just laying waste to this moderator.
You're also talking about 20% tariffs on the rest of the world. That is going to have a serious effect on the overall economy. And yes, you're going to find some people who will gain from individual tariffs. The overall effect could be massive in terms of the economy.
I agree it's going to have a massive effect, positive effect. It's going to be a positive, not a negative.
Well,
let me just I know how committed you are to this, and it must be hard for you to spend 25 years talking about tariffs as being negative and then have somebody explain to you that you're totally wrong. It'll have a negative. It will have. I'll go a step further.
40 million, this country has 40 million jobs is a lot of jobs to rely on.
They're all coming back.
Those are 40 million jobs. Those are 40 million jobs in America that rely on trade.
Are you ready? John Deere, great company. They announced about a year ago they're going to build big plants outside of the United States, right? They're going to build them in Mexico.
And you threatened them with tariffs and they stopped.
That's right. I said, if John Deere builds those plants and not selling anything into the United States, they just announced yesterday they're probably not going to build the plants, okay?
But Trump wasn't done there. He absolutely nuked that moderator, telling him he doesn't know what he's talking about.
What does the Wall Street Journal know? I'm meeting with them tomorrow. What does the Wall Street Journal know? They've been wrong about everything. So have you, by the way. You've been wrong about it.
You're trying to turn this.
You've been wrong about it.
No, you're trying to turn this into debate. There are business people.
But you're wrong.
People.
You've been wrong all your life on this stuff.
Love him or hate him, that is Donald Trump to a T right there. It turns a lot of people off. A lot of people love that act. On the other campaign, here's Tim Walz on the campaign trail for Kamala.
And Senator Vance, he became a media darling. He wrote a book about the place he grew up, but the premise was trashing that place where he grew up rather than lifting it up. This guy's a venture capitalist cosplaying like he's a cowboy or something. I don't even know what a venture capitalist does most of the time.
So the Democrat nominee for vice president doesn't even know what a venture capitalist is. Is that bad? The Biden-Harris Department of Justice is working frantically to challenge state efforts to remove non-citizens from voter rolls in 2 states ahead of the election. Told you about one, that's Virginia, just weeks after the Department of Justice sued Alabama and its top election official over the state's efforts to ensure that only American citizens would get to determine the fate of the state of the country. The DOJ filed that lawsuit on October 11th against the Commonwealth of Virginia, the Virginia State Board of Elections, and the Virginia Commissioner of Elections, claiming that non-citizen voter purges was too close to the election day. Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin characterized the lawsuit as, quote, politically motivated election interference, and his lawyer, former Virginia Attorney General Richard Cullen, maintains that Virginia's efforts are entirely lawful. Of apparent concern to the Biden-Harris Department of Justice is Section 8C2 of the National Voter Registration Act, the quiet period provision, which requires states to complete programs intended to systemically remove the names of ineligible voters from registration lists by no later than 90 days prior to the primary election or general election for federal office. It does not, however, preclude correction of a registrant's information. Well, now Virginia is not taking the DOJ's intervention lying down. Youngkin said in a statement this week, quote, with less than 30 days till the election, the Biden-Harris Department of Justice is filing an unprecedented lawsuit against me and the Commonwealth of Virginia for appropriately enforcing a 2006 law signed by Democrat Tim Kaine that requires Virginia to remove non-citizens from the voter rolls. A process that starts with someone declaring themselves a non-citizen and then registering to vote. Virginians and Americans will see this for exactly what it is, a desperate attempt to attack the legitimacy of elections in the Commonwealth, the very crucible of American democracy. With the support of our Attorney General, we will defend these common sense steps that we are legally required to take with every resource available to us. Virginia's elections will be secure and fair, and I will not stand idly by as this politically motivated action tries to interfere in our elections, period. End quote. Those are the words of Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. I'm glad that he is not taking this lying down. Of course, that is nakedly apparent what this is. This is just a politically motivated step the Harris Department of Justice is taking to ensure that people who are not able legally to vote can actually vote. I hope Virginia follows through here and cleans up their elections to the best of their ability. And now here's this from Gallup. Americans continue to register record low trust in the mass media, with 31% expressing a great deal or a fair amount of confidence in the media to report the news, quote, fully, accurately, and fairly. That figure is similar to last year's 32%. Americans' trust in the media, such as newspaper, television, and radio, first fell to 32% in 2016 and did so again last year. For the third consecutive year, more U.S. adults have no trust in the media, 36%, than trust it a great deal or a fair amount. Another 33% of Americans expressed, quote, not very much confidence at all. Gallup first asked that question back in 1972 and has measured it in most years since 1997. In 3 readings in the 1970s, trust ranged from 68 to 72%, yet by Gallup's next readings in the late 90s and early 2000s, smaller majorities of 51 to 55% trusted the news media. The latest findings are from a poll conducted September 3rd through the 15th, which includes Gallup's annual update on trust in the media and other civic and political entities in the United States. The only thing that's surprising to me about these figures is that they're not actually lower. About 1 in 3 Americans still trust the media. Those are rookie numbers. You got to bring those numbers down. And finally, businessman David Sachs says Kamala Harris is in trouble. He described why he thinks that and what's actually going on with her campaign and why she's making all these new media appearances on the All In podcast. Listen to this.
And now I give you your tomahawk. You ready, Sachs? You want your tomahawk? You want it rare? Here it comes. 2024 election update. The betting markets and polling indicate a really tight race, but maybe Trump is surging this week. Polymarket, which is a betting market, has Trump 55 to 45 versus Kamala. Kalshi, another betting market, 52-48 Trump. Bovada and PointsBet, those are offshore booking, and Polymarket is also offshore. 52-48 Trump. Nate Silver, friend of the pod, his algorithm has it 53-47 Kamala. Real Clear polling, that's an algorithm, has Kamala with a 2-point lead. New York Times Siena, Kamala with a 3-point lead. Reuters Ipso, pretty well trusted, 3-point lead for Kamala. NPR PBS Maris poll has Kamala with a 2-point lead. So sport books and betting markets are favoring Trump slightly, while the polls are slightly favoring Kamala. Sachs, I sliced it up nice for you. You got nice 10 slices of meat here. Which slice you going for?
Well, I think your recitation of the polls there kind of mixes up a couple of things. There's popular vote polls, and then there's Electoral College, which goes state by state. If you look at pretty much now all the main pollsters, you look at Tony Fabrizio, you look at Real Clear Politics, they're now showing that Trump is winning the Electoral College right now. He is up in almost every swing state, including, I think, Michigan, which is pretty surprising. Clearly, there's been a huge swing towards Trump over the last week or two. And look, there's still 25 days to go, so anything can happen. I don't want to overstate this, but yeah, this is a good example right here, showing that Trump now has a lead in every
College is 296 to 242.
What is Fabrizio?
He's just a Republican pollster, but his accuracy is pretty high.
I've never heard of it. Fabrizio.
Well, another guy who I think is more neutral is Mark Halperin, who is a pundit who has been very accurate this election cycle. Remember, he's the one who broke the scoop that Biden would be replaced by Harris. And he even said exactly when it would happen. And he predicted it down to the day. He was exactly right about that. And if you follow his account, he is now saying that both Republican and Democrat insiders that he talks to are both saying the same thing, which is their internals are now showing Trump ahead in every swing state or almost every swing state. And things seem to be breaking Trump's way right now. Again, there's 25 days left. But if you're wondering why is Harris all of a sudden doing interviews, it's because their internals started showing that she was in trouble. So they decided to get her out more. And
or is it the other way? Is it that her Howard Stern interviews or whatever are causing her to lose votes?
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, so,
which one is it, do you think? Because I don't know when, I don't have the dates of all these polls versus that.
No, I think it's what I predicted a couple of months ago. It's the doom loop. So what I said 2 months ago is that if Harris gets behind, she's going to have to abandon this sort of basement strategy of not doing interviews. She's going to have to start doing interviews. The problem is she's not good at interviews. And if she does more interviews, she's going to fall further behind in the polls, and it could cause a doom loop. So that's where we appear to be right now. I said that on August 30th.
So that is businessman David Sachs saying the real reason Kamala is out there doing interview after interview is because of those internals. And now she's locked in a doom loop where the more people see her, the less they like her. What do you think of that analysis? I'm not quite that optimistic about the American people's perception of reality. What do you think? Let me know at Real AM Update on X. That'll do it for today. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.